D12. So if you want to open it and you can fill in your answers now while we're doing this, that way you have it done and you don't have to do this part later. Ooh, excitement. So what you want to do is download that YRBS 2015 data file and open that up. While you're doing that, I'll just tell you a little bit about the assignment. So I was reading an article and I thought it sounded cool. So I got the data set, a similar data set to what they used, and kind of made the rest of the assignment based on that so that you could see what you're doing actually happens out there in the real world. And if you want to read that study, I posted it on D12, but you don't have to. Or maybe read it after the semester ends. You're like, I have a little time now, maybe I'll look at it. I'm not going to do all of this for you, but the first part is just identifying if it's nominal, ordinal, or continuous for each of these variables. And then you have to make a table. I'm not making you recode anything because I know that that's not very exciting, but you do have to make this table one with just the mean or standard deviation or the number and percent. So I started it for you. And you also have to run tests for either an independent t-test or a chi-square to determine if there's a difference in that characteristic, or IV, between the DV of feeling sad or hopeless and report the t value or chi-square value and the p value. We're not going to do that now either. And then you just have to report which were significantly different between sad or hopeless status, yes or no. And then part number 4 is what we're going to do now, so that you don't really totally hate me 100%. Let me open up the one on Word, that way I can put what values in, that way you can see what I'm doing. Okay. So we're down here at number 4. Does everyone who wants to have the SPSS file open have it open? Everyone's good? Okay. So first we're going to identify the DV and IVs from this question. Can you predict hours of sleep from hours of computer use, age, experiencing hopelessness, using alcohol, and gender? So what is our DV? Hours of sleep. And it's measured continuously. And then what are our IVs? Hours of computer use is one. Yep. Yep. Using alcohol. And gender. So you'll notice this one has both continuous and categorically measured variables. Another reason why we're going to do it together. So what we're going to do now is now we know our DV and our IV. So we can actually run this in SPSS. So we have our data file open. I'm not making you change any variables, so we're just going to go in and do it. So analyze, regression, linear. Then we move over our dependent variable, which is hours of sleep. And then our independent variables are hours of computer use, age, I can't read these because I know them by their names. SAD is the experiencing hopelessness variable. Alcohol is the using alcohol variable, and then gender. And I'm not going to click any additional things this time. So just the estimates and model fit. Is everyone okay here? Okay. So then we press OK, and we get our results. So first, we notice that it didn't come up with anything saying that there's an issue, which is good. So we have all of these variables were entered. Here's our model summary. So our R value is 0.254, and our R squared value is 0.065. We're going to skip this ANOVA table and come down to our coefficients in order to fill out part B of the question. Yes?
When you did analyze, regression, linear,
Yep.
and the second box, did you move gender?
You move the 5 IVs. So average hours of computer use, age, sad or hopeless, current alcohol use, and with which gender do you identify? I think it's called average computer use on a school day. I know. Make sure you open the one that's the homework data set. Because otherwise it won't work for you. So if you go on D2L's the homework page for... Maybe close down SPSS and reopen it with that again. Sometimes if you try and open more than one thing, it gets mad at you. Because it's a 2-year-old. Just saying. So to transfer this output over to part B, I started with the first constant row. So you put the B value of 8.607 in the first spot, then 0.0389. There's no beta value for the constant, so you skip that. Then your T is 22.125 with a P value of 0.000. And then we keep going, so then we put the B of negative 0.070, 0.015, negative 0.100, T of negative 4.709, oops, not 44, and then a p-value of 0.000, and so on for the rest of them. I'm not going to pronounce them as I write them, so otherwise I'll get really confused. So just keep filling in the table from that output. So once you have all of that entered, now we want to determine which of these 5 are significant in this prediction equation. To do that, we look at the p-value. If it's less than 0.05, it's significant. So which one of these is significant? All of them are significant. That's because I played around until I found one where they were all significant. So I marked them with an asterisk because we want to show that they are significant at that p less than 0.05 level. Next, we're going to report that prediction equation based on our table. So what I'm going to do is write in our dependent variable equals, first we put our constant, which is 8.607. Then we're going to add that to negative 0.070 times hours of computer use. Or if it makes more sense, instead of adding a negative, you can subtract it. Some people don't like adding that plus with a minus, so you can just do the minus. Then the next one is age, so you can either do plus negative 0.111 or minus 0.111 times age. And then so on until you have all the rest of these 3. So minus 0.464 times sad, hopeless. And I'll explain how to figure out what this means in part F. Make sure for the last one you put a plus sign because it's not negative. So your equation should look something like that. And this dV would be hours of sleep. We're going to skip to part F and then we'll come back and do the other 2 in a second. So we're going to use this prediction equation in part F. So I'm just going to highlight it and copy it down here so I don't have to retype it because that would be annoying. And then we have these values here. So using that prediction equation, estimate the predicted hours of sleep based on the following values. So we have values of some other person who said that they would use, on average, they use a computer 4 hours a day. They're 17 years old. They have experienced feeling sad or hopeless. They have used alcohol in the past month, and they're female. So we can do the continuous ones pretty easily. So the hours of sleep, or hours of computer use, we'll just put in 4 in where that hours of computer use was written out. And then for age, we'll put in 17 where it said age. Now for the other 3, we have to look and see how they were coded in the data set in order to determine what we should put there. So if we go back to the data set and look at sad or hopeless, which is the last one, we see that 0 would mean no, and 1 would mean yes. So since this person said yes, they have experienced feeling of sad or hopelessness, what value would we put here? 1. So since we have these nominal variables, you can either put a 1 or a 0. In this case, since the person responded that yes, they have experienced feeling sad or hopeless, and in our original data, yes was a 1, that's what we're going to put into our equation. For alcohol use, we're going to do the same thing. So they said yes, they have used alcohol in the past month. So let's look at our data set, the original one, and see what that would mean. So 0 would mean they didn't use it in the past month, and 1 would mean that they did. So now, what does that mean? Our alcohol use would be here. 1. And then the last one is gender. So gender in our data file is coded as 1 female and 2 male. So based on that, since she's female, we're going to put a 1 in gender. If she was male, we would put a 2 there. So does that make a little bit of sense? Just how to fill in this equation? And then what you're going to do is multiply all of the multiplying ones together and then either subtract or add them. I'm not going to do that right now because I stink at typing them in to the calculator on the computer. So I'll let you do that part by yourselves. But based on the fact that you have the correct formula here, you should end up with the right answer. And the last part of this question is just saying, is that predicted amount of sleep? So it should come out to something in a range of values that seems like how many hours of sleep someone might get. Is it above or below the recommended 9 hours of sleep for adolescents? So if your value is 10, it would be above the recommended hours. If your value is 8, it would be below the recommended number of hours. So make sure you calculate that number and answer that question. Now that we did one together, does it make a little more sense? For that part at least. Okay. So now we'll skip back up to part D, the write-up. So all we want to say here is a multiple linear regression, which I'm going to abbreviate, was done to predict hours of sleep based on hours of computer use, age, feelings of sad, hopelessness, alcohol use, and gender. And then the other part I'm asking you to write is what the R squared means. So we didn't put that anywhere yet, but if we look back on our output, the R squared value is in that model summary. It's a value of 0.065. So the R squared value of 0.065 indicates that, what does it indicate? What do we think? So we multiply it by 100 first to get a percent. So 6.5% of the variability in sleep hours of sleep is accounted for by the IVs that we measured. You can write them out if you want, but I'm just going to leave it at that. So what this really means is that there's 93.5% that's not explained by these variables. So there are some other factors. The majority of sleep hours is predicted by some other factor than the ones we accounted for in our model. Does that make sense? So what are some other things you could think of that might account for someone's sleep habits in adolescence that we didn't measure in this little equation here? TV watching could be something. It doesn't have to be in the data set. It could be like anything in the entire world.
Cell phone use.
Cell phone use, that's a good one. Netflix watching. I would measure that as separate than TV watching because I totally don't consider it the same thing. Maybe activities they're involved in, number of activities. So maybe those other things in their lives account for that larger percent of why they sleep a longer amount or a shorter amount than age or computer use, gender. Does that make sense? So there's something else out there that has a bigger impact on the number of sleep hours than those 4 or 5 things we are measuring. The last question, part E of this, is asking you how you would decide which of these variables contributes the most to predicting the hours of sleep. You do that by using this beta value, and you want to look at the one that's closest to 1 or furthest away from 0, whichever is easier for you to think of. So in this example, which is furthest away from 1? Or furthest away from 0, closest to 1? Based on this middle beta value.
0.05.
Nope. So which is the, okay, if none of them were negative, if they were all positive, which is the biggest number?
0.071.
162. So since this is the biggest value, it's the closest to 1 in this case, it doesn't matter if it's negative or positive. That would be the one that contributes the most to predicting how many hours of sleep there are in these adolescents. I know it doesn't really make sense, but if someone says that if adolescents say that they're experiencing sadness or hopelessness, apparently, according to this information that we have right now, that's the most likely factor out of the ones we measured to predict their hours of sleep. That's all you have to say for that question. How's everyone?
E, right?
That's for E. Yep. How's everyone feel about that? Everyone have it written down in their file so that you can just do the rest of the homework? Okay. So the last one, number 5, I'm not going to make you actually do a correlation. You just have to look at this output and answer the question. So just describing what the correlation is. Is it positive, negative, and what the R value and P value are from this table over here. There are a total of 40 points on this assignment. The actual assignment is worth 30 points, so 10 of them are bonus points. Plus we just did number 4, which means there's like a lot of bonus points because you should get that one right. So shouldn't be super craziness. Also, remember this is due on Wednesday, December 14th by midnight, 11:59 p.m. So you have a week and a half to work on it instead of just a week. We don't have a final. We do have class next Monday. We'll just be talking about non-parametric tests. If you have other things to study for, I totally get it. And if you don't want to come to class, I totally understand. But I do recommend that you look at the videos that are posted for non-parametrics at some point. It can be after the semester's over. But I'm not going to ask you any questions, and there's no homework associated with the non-parametric tests. So if you have like 8,000 exams and papers next week and you don't want to come to class on Monday, that's fine. I'll still be here, but it's okay. And then discussion board 5, let me just pull that up really quick, it's listed under module 12, or you can get there from the top thing, just going to discussions and going down. I want you to think through, can you see that kind of? Sort of. Think about the class and answer these 7 questions on the discussion board. That's it. Which I know that there's 7 questions, but like you can write like a sentence. It doesn't have to be a novel. It could just be 1 word if you want, that's fine. Just answer all of them and then you get credit for doing the discussion board. So that's pretty easy points right there. I'll make it available now, so if you want to just get it done with, you can. And that's due by Friday the 16th by midnight, so that's like almost 2 weeks to do that. So that's all I've got for you guys. But if I don't see you next week, good luck with all the rest of your finals. If I do, well then I'll tell you that again next week. If you have any questions, I'll stand up here for a little bit.
Excuse me.
Yes.
If I download the wrong thing, can you put me yours? Does it say like asthma? Mine say asthma, bully. It don't say that. It doesn't when I download it.
Interesting.
It's just something totally different on my computer.
And you're here?
I downloaded
This one?
yeah.
That's weird. Let me just make sure it's like it works. I don't. That's very strange that yours is doing that.
Yeah, because this is sad. Mine say bully. It does have the bully, but then it say asthma. It doesn't say computer and all that. You could look on.
Yeah, let's look because that's really strange.
I opened the wrong thing.
Okay, so that one's my cell file. That's the Excel file. I don't really know. Did we give you another file earlier for class activity? That was different? Because I got rid of different years.
Oh. So, almost so, let's start first.
When you want it open, it won't. And then when you don't care about it, you might have opened one earlier.
You ready for transfer?
I'm not taking it
I don't know.
yet.
That's one of my favorites.
Oh,
Is this shaded?
okay, so now that I can just do that, I'm going to come and make sure you can open it. So that should work. So make
We
sure.
got 2 more to go.
Oh.
Just make sure when you are using it, that it says that at the top when you're doing another. Well, you'll know because you won't have the same thing.
That is how we work. I'll give you all the papers. I don't know how to see.